Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And I have come across a video by Kinobody, or Kenobi the Wise One, the Bruce Wayne of the fitness industry. Here we go, you guys love it when I do this. Bruce, I was wondering what would break fast. Your spirit? Or your body. But, you know, as much as I might like to pick on him over his bad form, injuries, stuff like that, that he's going to cause himself and others, I actually thought this was a pretty well-balanced video. It was a pretty well-balanced video. It wasn't bad. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on scaling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Now, I didn't necessarily agree with everything that Kinobody had to say in the video, but I will give credit where credit is due. You know, he kind of came in and he discussed the importance of gaining strength and muscle growth, meaning strength at a certain rep range. In other words, it is very difficult to get big doing nothing but heavy singles. You know, if you're hitting maxes all the time, and I'm not to say that there aren't jacked people who do Bulgarian style training, because there are, but it really isn't ideal for gaining size. But by that same token, someone can do a max effort type training system and then use the strength they gain from that when they go over to, you know, say 5s or 6s or something like that, to put on an enormous amount of muscle because they have perfected the motor pattern. They have perfected their neuromuscular efficiency on those movements, and they actually have the potential to really utilize a lot of workload due to that neural efficiency and everything that they've gained. And so therefore they can stack on size when they go into a different phase of training pretty effectively as a result of that. But the point is of this, though, he really discussed that in detail, and he pointed out, you know, that muscle gains are slow, and that if you're doing, you know, work sets with 135 on the bench press, and you add 20 pounds to that, you're only going to gain a little bit of muscle. Now, there might be some motor pattern unit learning, some neural efficiency and everything involved, but you're only going to gain a little bit of muscle, because let's be honest here, guys, in the grand scheme of things, 20 pounds on your bench isn't really that much. It's not. I mean, look how many of us you see on YouTube who've been training for a long time. We're not standing around doing work sets with 185 pounds on the bench. Let's be honest here. That's would be ridiculous for a man who's close to 200 pounds who has any appreciable muscle mass. You know, I wouldn't even bother. So the point there is that if you've built a big chest and triceps and everything from the bench press, you're probably moving a hell of a lot of weight on it. You're not working with 185. You're not working with 195. And you're sure as hell not working with 155. So the point that he had there is that you actually will gain muscle from it. It's just that you've only gained a little bit of strength, guys. You've only gained a little strength, and some of it is going to be motor unit learning. Because if you're at the point where you're benching 135 for your work sets, you probably haven't had a lot of motor unit learning. You haven't perfected the movement. There is a lot of neuromuscular efficiency and motor pattern stuff to be learned still, unless you're a female. If you're a woman, you probably, you know, got that sorted. But if you're a man, you probably don't. You're still very much a noob. And so, yeah, you have a lot of coordination and motor pattern learning to learn. And so some of that 135 to 155, let's say, whether you're doing, you know, 5 to 8 rep range or whatever you happen to be doing, yeah, that's not really that much. And some of it is going to be learning. And maybe when you put another, I don't know, 50 pounds on there, 70 pounds on there, you know, when you get up to where you're benching 225 for 5, 6, 7 reps, then you're going to have gained some serious size from the extra tension. But I mean, when you're talking about a little 20-pound jump when you're still at noob numbers, no, you're only going to see a tiny amount of muscle growth, and people need to remember that. And he's right, muscle growth is slow, and usually to see significant muscle growth for a natural lifter, you're going to have to add a lot of weight to the bar for your work sets. And again, people get confused with guys on tons of drugs, and they say, well, this guy doesn't use that much weight. He just does all this pumping. Yeah, but he's on a lot of drugs too. If you're not on drugs, you're going to find there is an enormous correlation between your overall strength and your muscle mass. And people need to remember, they say, well, your 1 rep max doesn't get you big. Well, not necessarily, but you need to get big to get a big 1 rep max. So it kind of works the other direction. I mean, nobody who squats 600 pounds raw with no wraps has chicken legs. You know, no one who benches 375, 400 pounds has a tiny chest and triceps. All right, let that sink in. So he had good points there, and I really do appreciate the fact that he brought up the rest time thing. I'm not real big on the rest pause training, but that almost defeats the purpose of the long breaks, unless I guess you're trying to do higher reps. You know, for example, if your goal is to do a 4-rep set and then an 8-rep set and then a 12-rep set, you know, then the reverse pyramid training, I guess that's what he's talking about. The reverse pyramid training makes sense in that context, and the longer breaks will give you more gains. But he did bring up the long breaks, and you know that is addressed in the scientific literature. I mean, even Dr. Gaines, Brad Schoenfeld has done studies on this, and they have conclusively found that longer breaks, so like 3 minutes or longer between sets, so that you can lift more weight and perform better, produces more workload. And if you're going to be on a limited number of sets, let's say you're only going to do 3 work sets, right? 3 work sets for an exercise, which is I think what Kinobody has people doing. You're going to gain more muscle with those longer breaks if you were lifting more weight on the later sets due to the longer breaks. So he's right. He's absolutely right. And the research backs it, and because it lets you lift more weight for the target number of reps. And I mean, you can get away with the shorter breaks and all this really lightweight and lots of volume if you're going to do lots and lots of volume. But if you're wanting to get in and out of the gym in an hour, hour and a half, you don't have room for a lot of that. You don't have room for a lot of that. If you are on a limited schedule, you're going to do a limited number of sets, the weight on the bar matters tremendously. And if you're losing 10 pounds on a second or third set that you could be lifting for those target reps, you are leaving gains on the table. That's it. You're losing gains for it. You're not maximizing what you could be getting out of every set. And I think that's the point, because he does promote fairly abbreviated training, which I do too to some extent. He's right. He's right. You have to take the longer breaks so that you can get more out of each set, because you need that additional tension. The point of contention where I'm going to disagree with him on is going to be on rep ranges. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the rep ranges he recommends, because if most people would come to me and say, Jason, what do you think is kind of ideal for people who want to get the most quality reps? In other words, if you want almost every single rep that you do in the gym to stimulate muscle growth, but you don't want to do a very, very large number of sets, I would say like the 5 to 8. Now, he's saying, I think, 6 to 10. We can disagree there slightly, but I don't think what he's saying is a bad choice either. 6 to 10 works pretty good for that. I just feel like you have a lot of useless reps there, and that's the problem we run into with the really, really high rep training. And what he did address, stopping about 1 rep short of failure, is your sweet spot for growth. Why? Because only the last 5 reps up to a muscle failure stimulate any muscle growth. And I don't care whether you're doing 3 rep sets, 5 rep sets, 10 rep sets, 20 rep sets. That's the only ones that hit the upper threshold fibers enough to stimulate new adaptation. So if you're not getting beyond that, you're not getting quality reps. So that's why I like working around 5 to 6. Because let's say you work with your 6 rep max and you do multiple sets of 5 with that. You are stimulating muscle growth on 4 of the 5 reps on every single set, right? You are stimulating muscle growth on all of those, and you're not doing a bunch of wasted reps with lighter weight, getting fatigued to the point to where you're hitting those upper threshold fibers. So I tend to think that that's kind of the sweet spot for it. And the problem is that when you go above that, you're just wasting reps, basically warming up early in the set so that you can get to growth. And then when you start going below that, there's no way you're maximizing the number of reps. I mean, we've got studies looking at that showing that 3 rep sets can produce just as much muscle growth as 10 rep sets. That has been pretty well documented in the literature, but you have to do more sets. In other words, you need 7 triples to get the same muscle growth as 3 sets of 10. Well, you're doing 7 sets versus 3. It still produces the same muscle growth. People need to understand that. But let's say you're doing 7 sets of 3, you might be working with your 4 or 5 rep max, right? You're only getting 3 quality reps per set. Whereas let's say we take, 3 sets of 6 to muscle failure. You're getting 15 reps that are stimulating muscle growth. Well, you have to do 5 sets of 3 with a weight that is your 5 rep max or heavier to get the same amount of growth stimulus that you got out of those 3. So you end up having to do more sets. And I mean, at the bare minimum, when you start dropping under 5 reps, you're going to have to do at least 2 more total sets to get similar muscle growth. That's just the way the math is going to pan out. Otherwise, you're just not getting enough quality reps. But high volumes of triples works very, very, very well for people who are trying to maximize strength potential and hypertrophy concurrently, but you end up having to spend a long time in the gym because you need long breaks between them. You end up doing 7 to 10 sets on an exercise, and that isn't for everybody. And then there's also the nervous system aspect of it. You're doing 7 to 10 sets with a weight that is usually 85% or more of your 1 rep max. That really does beat up your recovery. It can be problematic. Recovery can be an issue. That's the downside of that sort of training. I actually do like that sort of training. I've used it. I've promoted it. But again, there is a price to be paid in terms of both gym time and recovery for training that way, even though from a programming perspective and from an actual workout perspective, that actually is a superior modality. But in the context of recovery, it can be difficult to work with, and it can be difficult to program around because of, again, the way that it beats your body up and your recovery a bit. It's harder to recover from. So it isn't necessarily ideal for everyone. And it's the reason I don't even do it these days myself, even though I like it. But that's kind of a side note that needs to be noted there, that's what I'm going to disagree with him on the rep range. And I don't think what he's saying is particularly bad. I don't think the 6 to 10, particularly if you're taking long breaks and you're pushing everything within one rep to failure, and you are doing big compound movements, and you're getting stronger in that rep range, yeah, you're going to gain, you're going to stack on muscle. And as a drug-free lifter, I think it's going to work pretty well. I would just push that rep range down a little more personally. That's really the only problem I had with anything he said in the video. To be fair, it was actually a pretty good video. I don't always like Kinobody. I don't always agree with what he says. But all in all, I thought he presented a pretty good points here, and I agree with probably 90% of what he said in the video. So I'm going to give credit where credit is due to someone I'm normally very critical of. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.